In this video, we got a pretty special printer by Elegoo, and some of you might recognize this or seen it. It's the OrangeStorm Giga, and they don't kid around when they say Giga, as this thing is huge. So this is going to be a very unique video, as we're going to unbox it, set it up, and do some prints. So let's get started. Alright, so as you guys can see, this is a very large printer and it actually comes in 2 boxes. And to really show you the size of it, let's put this benchy here, and there you go. The boxes are absolutely huge. Let's measure them. So we got 4 feet by 4.5 almost. So one of them is a little smaller, 1 foot and a couple inches, and the other one's a little larger or taller, 1 foot and about 5 inches. And they also weigh quite a bit, so moving them around is not that easy. So the 2 boxes house 2 different things. So the top one here, the smaller one, has the left and right Z-axis assembly, and the one on the bottom here, you guys can see it says bottom assembly, X-Y-axis assembly. So yeah, and we can see there's a picture showing what the printer looks like. There are handles on the side to make it easier to move around, and pretty much same thing on the other side. So let's go ahead and cut the tape. Let's open this thing up. Got a pretty thick top layer, very large, and this is what we see. What's interesting is it's packed just like a smaller printer would be, with lots and lots of thick foam, which is quite impressive to say the least. And we can see the frame there of the upper gantry. The rods are huge, and this appears that it's the top layer, as there's another layer beneath this. So I'm gonna have to carefully pull this out, as I am a one-man show here, and set it to the side, and we'll see what's underneath this layer. All right, so I got this layer out of the box just sitting here on the floor next to it, and this is what the layer below looks like. So it's just the other side of the upper section, and we can see it looks very similar to the other one with the motor and the way it all looks. So everything is very large and quite heavy duty. As you guys can see, this metal is really thick, so there's a lot of weight just to these pieces. So manhandling these out takes a little bit of effort. And check out those screw leads, wow, huge. And the rods are just giant. And it's nice to see that they're protected. So I'm gonna put this next to the wall and also get the other one out. All right, so this one's out, and they actually can stand on their own. This bracket's holding them. I got the other one over here on this side. So we do still have a couple more pieces in here. Looks like the top braces. This one here has the Elegoo logo on it. But yeah, that's everything for this layer and this whole box. So now we can go to the bottom box. And yeah, guys, just take consideration that you will need a lot of space. All right, so we got the second box opened up. Let's see what's inside. All right, so we can see some accessories. We can also see another section there, and this looks like has our X-axis. As we can see, there's a chain here. Some kind of spool holder here. That looks like for the large spools. Smaller spool holder. Our hot end. We also get the sample of filament. And a box here with accessories. So yeah, it looks like there's another layer beneath this one. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this layer out, and we'll see what's underneath. And in a bit, we're gonna go through everything that's included here. All right, so we got all of our stuff out of there. We got a pretty large screen, but we'll check it out here in a second. Let's look at what's on the bottom layer. And here we can see we have the base. And we also have, it looks like some kind of built plate pieces or something. And underneath, we have the actual build plate that's in 4 sections. So I'm not too sure exactly what these are for, but they're shiny and they have holes on each side. So I'm sure they're for something, and we do get 2 of them. So yeah, that's quite unique how there's 4 different sections and you print on top of the whole thing. And also I'm guessing you can divide them here into 4 different prints also. So yeah, quite a unique design here for the Giga. The base does look pretty chunky. All right, so we got the base out and it was pretty heavy, and that is the bottom layer, and there appears to be nothing else under there. There's really thick foam underneath, which makes sense to protect it. Now, if I would do this again, I think I would stand this up and then walk this thing out, as it was a little too heavy to try to lift it out. Now, if you have 2 people, it shouldn't probably be a problem, but by yourself, it is quite heavy. So I'm gonna move the box out of the way. We'll kind of clean up here, and there's quite a lot of interesting things to see, especially about this thing. All right, so we got all our pieces here sitting by the wall, and I do have to say this is definitely an impressive printer right out of the box. So while we have the base here against the wall and it's just kind of leaning there, this will be a good time to look underneath, and the first thing that caught my eye is how many power supplies there are inside. And so we got voltage selectors here on each one. So there's 4 on top and 1 more down here that also has the voltage selection. And then the rest here, some venting, and I can see wiring through the holes, and I believe this is where maybe our motherboard is, or the main board. You can see our Wi-Fi coming out of there. And we do have another fan here to probably cool off the electronics inside. Now another thing that's quite unique are these feet. They're very heavy duty. They are adjustable, so you can adjust these as needed according to, you know, the level of your floor. And they are hard plastic. So they're made where you can slide the printer around, which is nice because this thing's going to be really heavy, and if you did need to move it, you would be able to with these kind of feet. And if we go down here to the center of it, we can see we got insulation, and that's the 4 build plate, so it is separated in 4 sections. So maybe it appears that the 4 power supplies are directly working for heating the plates separately, and then we have another power supply here that probably powers everything else up. But yeah, very unique here underneath. We have these aluminum channels that go through for bracing, and not just that, but our bed is connected there. You can see springs in between all here on all of the build plates. So it doesn't look like anything's adjustable from under here, and everything it looks like is pre-adjusted from the factory. And we also have this C channel kind of here, and we got wiring hiding behind inside there. So, but yeah, that's the base underneath. Quite interesting for sure. So let's take a quick look here. We saw that we have the filament, a large spool holder, it rolls. So this is going to be for those 5 kilogram kind of spools. Yeah, you do get a normal one here. And then we got our hot end, which looks pretty interesting, pretty common, I would say. Nothing too special, to be honest. There's our induction sensor there. We've got some lights. Our nozzle, the heat block is insulated. It's quite long, so it's kind of like a volcano style. You can see the 2 fans there on each side. Our heat break there, electronics there on the back. So it is a little bit larger than you would expect, but for this kind of printer, it definitely feels a little small. So yeah, and the main part here, we have the touchscreen, and it's large. As you guys can see, it is an Elegoo screen, the same orange color, and it looks like it just clips on the back. And we do have a wire that comes out of it that will plug in to the main board. So the last thing here is we have our box, which comes with all of our accessories and our manual. So the manual looks to be very nice. We got the machine parameters there. Shows us and explains what everything is, the packing list, everything that's included, and then step by step of how to assemble it, which we'll be doing here shortly. So we got a lot of stuff in here. This looks like a filament guide and a detector, a bunch of bolts, quite a few different nozzles there, or maybe the same, I'm not sure. Would be nice if they were different size, but we can see the type of nozzle that is. And we also get a thumb drive and a little piece of PTFE tubing. More bolts, and they say what kind they are, even more bolts. So yeah, there's quite a few bolts to install. So here we have some kind of cable track clips and stops. A bag of tools, which comes with an open-ended wrench and Allen wrenches, and looks like a flat and Phillips screwdriver. Here we have another filament detector, which is different from this one. I think this is maybe for using it with the 5 kilogram spools. We got an Ethernet wire for lane connection, some zip ties, the power cord, very thick, and that's what it looks like. The US plug on the other end. not too long, but it looks like about maybe 4 or 5 feet. Got a clean out needle. This is for the nozzle. More hardware, little bolts. Not sure what this is. And also, I guess we get a little gift which says giveaway on it with a little micro SD card in it, an adapter. So yeah, that's everything for the box. All right, so I brought the base down. So this is where all our power supplies are. And on this side, if you look over here, we got a little cap. And if you open that, there's like a circuit breaker in there. That's quite interesting. But I went ahead and took out the little bolts from this cover here because I'm very curious what's underneath. So this is not too hard to take apart. And it comes out, and you guys can see we have quite a few things to see. So on this end, we have this main circuit breaker where the power comes in, and this goes to the power switch. Here we have a junction box, fan here for cooling. So this is kind of random here, but we do have a power supply, its own fan. So this is one of the 5 power supplies, and they do appear all to be the 400 watts, 24 volt. So we have lots of wiring going everywhere. Here we have a junction for the high voltage. So this is the distribution between the main power to all of the power banks. And we can see how it comes in, thicker wires, and then it goes out. And going to this side, we have a cooling fan here that cools the main board. Another fan here. Over here we have some kind of logic. It's a maker base. That's the model number there. It goes here and connects to the main board, so there's quite a few things going on. So the board does look Giga specific, as that's what it's called, version 3.0. And yeah, everything looks very well connected here. Our stepper drivers are integrated. Yeah, very interesting. A lot more normal than I thought it would be. And here's our little antenna that goes out for the Wi-Fi. So yeah, quite interesting how it's all put together. So that's this side. Let's check out the other side, which was the top with the power supplies. And again, just take a few bolts and this thing pops off. And you guys can see we got power supplies all lined up. And each one is the 400 watt 24 volt, just like on the other side. And we do have a circuit here for powering on and off, looks like. And there's a fan next to each one. And yeah, it's just a repeat of 4 of them total here. So yeah, this is quite an interesting and unique way of how Elegoo decided to put it together. All right, so let's put the Giga together. And here in the installation manual, we can see that it's actually not too hard considering, you know, the size of this printer. It is quite straightforward. So for step 1, we're gonna put the 2 ends or sides and bolt them down with 4 bolts on each. And the way you tell which way is which, this is the front with our power switch and screen plug there and USB. And your back is obviously where your power comes in and where this junction is here with the circuit breaker. So let's move this to the side for now. And so the way I got these sitting is actually upside down. This is the bottom and that's the top. And if we look at the manual, we can see that our motor is towards the back. So this is the front of the printer here. So our motors are gonna go here and here. So this one's for that side and the other one is for this side. And the bolts that we need are the HM645s, and there's 8 of them, 4 on each side. We're also going to need our Allen wrench. So I'm going to go ahead and grab one of these and set it on there and start it. The only thing you need to watch out is for these wires, not to, you know, sit on them. But yeah, our bolts are going to go literally through here. All right, so we got our first side started, kind of. So you do have to kind of do everything all at once, meaning as you set this thing on there, you got to start the bolt because it's not going to hold itself. You got to kind of hold it and start it. So I just got this one bolt here, so we're going to put another one here, here, and here. But I will say it would be a lot easier if you had 2 people. I'm gonna build it by myself so you guys can see that it's definitely possible to do it. And you know, you do have to expect to lift pretty heavy pieces. And I had to flip this thing around, which was not hard. If you just take your time, it's actually not too bad. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten these, and then I'll go ahead and put the other side on and tighten those, which is over here. All right, and that's what we got. So both of the sides are on. I didn't tighten them too hard. I just kind of snugged them. I'm going to tighten everything really good once we build out the whole thing. So again, the only thing you need to worry about is the wires here coming out. And yeah, it lines up pretty accurately, which is quite surprising how nice everything comes together on such a large printer. So we're done with that. The next step is brackets. These angle brackets that go in these corners. The only thing is I don't remember seeing them. I might have missed them in the box. I need to find those. All right, so this is the smaller box, and on the bottom layer, you guys can see there they are all nestled up. I don't know how I missed that, but that's what we're looking for. All right, so we got all of our corner bracings, and there are a couple different bolts that go in here. So this is where we're installing them. So if we look at the manual, we can see that the upper holes, or the farther away, are the 640s, and the ones in the middle closer together here are the 630s. So the 630s are shorter and the 40s are the longer ones. Pretty cool. It's all really straightforward. And I would say this would be a pretty easy assembly for practically anyone. Snug these up just a bit. I'm gonna come back and tighten everything. And the reason for that is once I find the final resting place for this thing, I'm sure it's going to be somewhat unlevel here and there. I might have to adjust the feet and check to make sure everything is good. But yeah, for now we're just gonna install the 4 corners on the bottom and then we'll go to the next step. All right, so the next part, we're gonna install the braces or the profiles that go on the very top. And there are 2 of them. So one of them has the logo here and it's gonna go up here. You can see these tabs sticking out. It's gonna butt underneath and the bolts are gonna go through it, and then we're gonna put our braces under that. So these are the bolts that are gonna go through the top. They have a flat head kind of design. And our brace has threaded holes where the bolts will thread in. 2 more on the other side. And there we go. Now we're going to do the same thing to the back side. But what's more important is this channel here goes on the inside and the outside is smooth. All right, looking good. So now we're going to install the 4 braces in the 4 corners. All right, so all of our braces are in. Everything is looking pretty good and sturdy. So we can actually go ahead and tighten up everything if we know where this thing's gonna permanently sit. But I wanna go ahead and install the last main piece and then I'll move it where it needs to be, which is the next step. And it's called the XY axis assembly. And so we're gonna need 8 628 bolts. Let's go ahead and set that on these brackets. You can kind of see the holes there. And so that appears to be the top. If we flip it around, we can see channels here that are kind of like cut out. We got threads inside there, so little notched out area is where it'll sit right on top of there. So I'm gonna go ahead and lift this thing and set it inside. All right, so the XY axis is in. It wasn't hard at all. It actually just slides right in either through the back or through the front. And so the large motor there hangs down and it's at the back. And again, it drops in right into those brackets where we're gonna put a total of 8 of these 628s. And that's all that's left in here. Again, guys, this is actually easier to install than I thought it would be from the beginning, as everything is very logical and goes together very well. All right, so our XY assembly is secured and everything is very stable. Yeah, I'm really happy with the overall construction of this printer. It's quite impressive. So for the next part, we're going to be working on the cable here, which I already had to cut 1 zip tie because it was underneath this mount. Here we have another zip tie. All right, so as you pick it up when it's laying down, this piece actually goes straight behind here and drops down just like that. And then this piece here, there's a tab or a mount. Here you guys can see it lines up right there. And then the chain kind of goes up and there's another mounting point right there. And then the end of it, the very bottom piece, will mount right here. So the chain essentially is just gonna ride against this wall as high as it needs to, kind of like that. And the manual does go through everything, showing where each of the parts go, and they're all labeled. So the only thing is the font is kind of small. I wish they blew it up a bit so it's easier to see. But yeah, it should be straightforward. So we need M425s, baggie here. Also M36, and maybe this whole little kit here, but yeah. All right, so the first thing we need is 2 of these M425s, and we're gonna permanently mount this bracket. Snug them up. Now we can see the chain is kind of sitting upright. So we just did that one. The next one is going to be the little bracket that holds the chain, which is in this pouch. And it's this guy here. And it goes right there. And just like that, kind of tucking the chain to the wall. Snug that up and you guys can see how it holds the chain from going back and forth. So for next part, we're going all the way down the chain. And you guys can see on the very bottom, there's 3 holes. Then there's 3 threads here on the profile. And we're going to be using the little bolts that were in here, 3x6. Gonna line it up and start the little bolts. So these wires kind of want to get in the way, but it's not too bad. All right, so those are in. And so for the last part of this step is we got to install these Z-axis end stop brackets. And if we go here towards the front of the printer, on one of the sides, we can see there is a sensor here, which this bracket here will slide into, and that's how it knows when to stop. And the bracket will mount here. There's 2 holes with threads, just like that, using the same M36 little bolts. That looks good. So we got 1 more on the other side, which goes right here. All right. So our next step is going to be installing the hot end assembly onto the cradle here on the top. I'll cut it loose, and now we can see it moves around. So the hot end mounts in 4 places, here from the back and then here from the front. Those little tabs there. And so it just literally sits kind of like that. And all you gotta do is line those up. And then the back ones will line up also. And so for the front, we got these little bolts. I think they're supposed to be 3/8, but labeled 6. And these are 3/10, which are gonna go through the back. So yeah, just lining them up. So we don't want to tighten this yet because we want to make sure the back will fit. So let it kind of move around. And we'll start the other one here. All right, should be good. And now we grab the 3/10mm, and they're literally gonna go from the back here. All right, so we're gonna snug these up real good. But one thing you wanna make sure is that you're really level here. So the orange part with the white part is at the same height. Same thing on this side here, as the whole head does move around a lot in the holes. So you gotta line it up where it's level and not too high and not too low, just kind of even with the brackets here. So for the next part, we're gonna be installing the spool holder, the screen, the roller guide, and the detector. So for the spool holder, we got these 2 bolts left, M425s, and they're gonna go through here. And we can see that we have actually a few places we can mount it, as there's 4 connections we can make throughout the top, and we can see there's holes for each side. So this is actually made where you can have 4 spool holders and 4 hot ends. So you can set this printer up with 4 different extruders to print together at once. But for now, we're just using 1, and we can mount that pretty much anywhere here on the top. Towards the center, I would guess is the best place. So I'm gonna mount it here like that. Snug it up. Let's install our filament detector next, which comes with the detector and the little bolt. And that literally is going to go here on the side through the bracket. And just like that. And then we're just going to tighten it. Just got to make sure it's lined up correctly so it doesn't pinch. So after tightening the bolt, this still moves around easily. That's where the filament will be fed from the spool holder here to the detector, then down to the extruder. Now we also have this other detector. This one has a roller, so this is going to use the external spool holder, feed down from the floor up around the roller, and then through the detector down to the extruder. And it goes up here anywhere you want, I guess. You can pick any hole. I think the detector goes on this side because if it's on the inside, it might butt against this frame here. But yeah, we're just gonna put our bolt through and start it. And now we can feed our filament, and this, by the way, does move around. So I can kind of go with the hot end as it travels. Now the only thing I'm worried about is it might scratch that, which maybe this washer here should go on the bottom. That probably does make more sense because it won't be rubbing on the whole thing, but just the washer. So I'm gonna flip this around. All right, so now the washer's on the bottom and it's not scraping on the channel. So it's just gliding on the washer underneath. So I think this is much better. So yeah, now we got 2 options, either to go through here from the bottom up or use the roller here with this detector here. And for the last step, we got the screen, which literally just clips onto the side here on the front to the right. So yeah, simply just grabs around the channel and just kind of falls in there, and you can adjust it, you know, anywhere you want. And then our plug just falls down all the way over here where it says screen, orientate it correctly, and it should go in. And then we're going to use the locking washer here to lock it so it doesn't get unplugged. But yeah, screen, super simple to install. And so for the last part, all we got to do is plug everything in and check our voltage on all of the 5 power supplies. So here at the hot end, we have a splitter with 1 wire that we need to plug in. So you can have up to 4. So we're going to just line up the plug and click it in. Simple as that, we're plugged in. So going down, the plugs here for the end stops on the Z axis. There's one on this side and another one on the other side. And we can see it says Z on them. There we go. Going to the back here with the motors. Here we have a Z motor plug that plugs right into the motor. And we can kind of tuck this wire in so it's not sticking out. All right, looks good. Here on the other side, we got a lot more going on as we have this junction box here. But we do have our Z motor that we'll go ahead and plug in first. So that's good. So all these wires coming down from the chain. Everything's labeled. So this one says detection. Here we have X, Y, and you guys can see they have a minus and then just regular corresponding there. So there's regular and then with a minus. So you can't really mess it up because the regular ones are the larger for the motor, and then the minus X or X minus is the smaller ones. Looks like for end stop switch. Same thing here for the Y. And then detection, I guess we'll go here on the bottom one. And then this really large, which is the power cable for the hot end, plug in here right at the end. And just like that. Pretty simple. Everything is quite clean in that corner. So that's pretty much everything for plugging in except for the detectors. So we got one here, okay, and the other one here. So these are not used. We can kind of tuck them away. Same thing for this one. But actually, totally forgot, there is a plug we need to plug in here, which you guys can see kind of comes out and then goes into the main plug. Then that travels down. So we do need to plug that in. All right, and I believe that is everything with plugging everything in. And our last step is quite important, which is checking all of this power supplies, 5 of them, 4 on this side and 1 on the other. They all have this yellow sticker. And I'm not sure if you guys can see, but mine are on 220 or 230. So I need to switch them to 115. And just like that, I need to go around and do that to all of them, or your printer's not gonna run right with the wrong voltage. And then here on the other side, we have 1. So yeah, definitely don't forget to do that, as it's quite important. So for the next part, we need to figure out where we're going to place this thing permanently. So I'm gonna just move it closer to the wall there. Just remember that any uneven surfaces will really flex this thing. And so wherever you plan on keeping it is where we're going to adjust the feet there, or the level of the base. So since we do have hard plastic feet, it should be able to just move here on this surface. And sure enough, it does. Actually not too hard to just kind of move it around. Which I'm glad they put those kind of feet on here. Rubber feet would be impossible to move this thing, as it would be very heavy. We do need some room in the back because we do have our spool holder. So we got to make room for that. And also, if we didn't want to use the external floor spool holder, that'd have to have some room there too. But yeah, that looks pretty good right there, I think. So what you want to have is a level. And what we need to do is level the frame on the bottom. And we can actually do that at the top, because as we move the foot here, the one side will flex because the printer is so heavy. It does move around as you pick up one side. Now we can go down here to the base and confirm that we have the same measurement, and you can even do it underneath on the channel there to be even more precise, but it actually all looks very similar from the top to the base to the bottom. On the front here, we can see that we are too high on the right side. That either needs to go down or up on this side, and then going over here, like very close. And the back is actually showing us the same thing, that this side needs to go down or that side needs to go up. So here we are at the front right foot. So what we need to do is grab some kind of wrench. I'm just using this adjustable. We're going to loosen the top nut, just like that, so it's loose. And then we're going to spin this bottom nut to screw it in more. That way the printer drops on this side. So yeah, this is not very difficult here. I'm just adjusting the foot down, and at the same time we're going to be looking at the level until it gets right. So this one does need to go down quite a bit, and it looks like we're almost there. A couple more turns, and that pretty much looks perfect on the level, if you guys can see that. So now we just need to tighten this upper nut, which actually was already hitting the top. But we just need to lock it in. And that's it. Now I'm going to do the back side, which has to be the same as this side. If you guys remember, our level was good here, but now it's off. So now we're going to be measuring the side here and the back as we're going down with that foot. And our other side here should be good because it was good before and it's still good now. So on this back foot itself is not moving, just the stem. So it's the same process. Just the foot's not spinning in circles, except the bolt itself is. So either way, we're still lowering it down until the correct level. Getting pretty close, and that should be good according to our level. Let's see the back here, also perfect. Double check this side, still good. The front, also good. And now we're officially leveled out on the whole printer. So once you're happy with the level and the permanent place of your printer, you want to go back and check all your bolts or tighten them, which mine I didn't tighten completely when I was putting it together, as I wanted it to flex to level before tightening it all up. So I'm going to go back and tighten all the bolts to kind of solidify the printer. And this is going to give it the rigidity to stay level in all the corners and everywhere, just to double check everything. Alright, so let's take a closer look at the OrangeStorm Giga. As you guys can see, this is a very large printer that requires a lot of room, and it's also quite heavy. Let's go ahead and measure it out. So we're looking at 44 inches or so deep, about 48 inches wide, which is 4 feet, and about 57, 58, and if you consider the spool holder, 5 foot to probably 5'5" with the spool on there. So the Giga is set up pretty straightforward, as we have this frame here that moves up and down, and then we have a motor here that moves the x-axis, and then a motor in the back here that tethers the 2 belts that move the y-axis. So pretty standard. The only thing is everything is oversized and beefed up, like these ultra huge rods that the Z travels on, and there are 4 total, 2 on each side, with lead screws that are also very huge. Lots of angle braces. That's where our spool holder is with the detector, and another one, which is a roller that will feed from the ground up and then down into the extruder. So you have a couple options. You can use a large spool holder from the bottom or just a normal one here from the top. But yeah, as far as the frame is concerned, everything is super solid and very well built and feels quite sturdy. Now, it being this large, you do still need to make sure you're on a very level surface or level the feet out as level as you can so the printer doesn't twist in funny ways. As it is big and heavy, gravity will, bend it around. But yeah, the design is quite nice. It's white. We got this Create the Future here with the orange theme everywhere. Very large touchscreen that does just clip onto the frame, which is kind of nice. It does plug in down here, and the wire just kind of hangs there, and you can kind of move it around back and forth where you need it. So these are the motors. There's two of them, one on each side, that run this belt, which runs the leads on both sides. We got end stop switches here for the Z-axis. Going back up, we can see we got chain rails for all the wiring. So the wiring is very well organized. And we even have the chain here for the X-axis, which you guys can see how it kind of works. So yeah, pretty standard stuff. Just everything is quite oversized. And another thing here to mention is that we have this one hot end, but we have 3 more plugs here where we can add 3 more. So this gives the option of having multiple hot ends on one rail, looks like. But what would be kind of cool if you had 2 rails with 2 nozzles, so you could have like 4 printers printing at once sort of thing. But this is quite an interesting setup here, as it's kind of made to print large, but also can be configured to print multiples, as there are 4 detector wires there. So you can connect up to 4 detectors and have 4 filaments feeding into 4 extruders. All the belts are large and thick, and the belts are adjustable here, both on each side, and also the X-axis over here. We are running on linear rails for the Y-axis and also the X. The hot end is pretty straightforward. It's just an oversized, normal looking hot end. You can see gear here for the extruder. Also induction sensor and some dual cooling fans here. Now the part that is quite interesting is the build plate, as it is very large. And it's made out of 4 different plates. So we got an 800 by 800 by 1000 tall print volume. And the 4 sections are PEI sheets that are magnetic, flexible. The build plates are adjustable, so this is how you level them out. And also they are individually powered by individual power supplies, which there are 5 of them total underneath here. If we go to this side, you can see there is a switch for each one here. So there's 4 over here, and then another one here on the back, which runs all of the electronics, and the other 4 run the heated beds. So if we go over here, we can see we got a circuit breaker here. So if anything shorts out, this should trip. And then we got the junction box here, that all the cables that come from the top, they go down into the board. And in the back here, we can see we got Ethernet connection. Our power input port, it is different looking than usual. It's more like a high amperage plug, and then a large on and off switch. And here we have the manufacturing label, which shows us some of the specs here. We got the build volume there, the wattage, which is 1530 watts, the size of the machine, and also the weight, which is 104 kilograms, which is over 200 pounds. We do have 4 feet that are large, and they are plastic. Because this printer is so heavy, it's kind of nice if you're sitting on the floor like this, you can still push it around, but it's definitely not going to move around on its own. And going to the front here, we have the screen plug, then our e-stop switch, and the USB drive port. Not too much here, just bolts. And yeah, pretty clean, nice, and very well designed printer. That's very impressive in its own right. Alright, so I'm pretty excited to power this thing on for the first time. I got the cord ready, plugged into an extension. So this is going to carry quite a bit of power, but it should be more than enough. You guys can see what the plug looks like. And it's going to plug back here, just like that. And the cord is about 4 feet, so not too long. We're just going to tuck it under here to make it look pretty clean. Before hitting that power button, make sure all your power supplies are switched to the correct voltage. There's 1 on this side and then 4 on the other. So let's go ahead and hit it. So I can hear a bunch of fans come on. The logo's coming on here, so it looks like it's loading up. And there we go. So I gotta really turn down my camera here. The screen's really bright. So it says here, system is currently booting, please wait. Now first things first, I wish the background was blacked out, not white like this, as it's quite bright. Let's click settings here real quick. Okay, so we can control the brightness. Let's turn that down just a little bit, or maybe a lot actually, so I can adjust my camera to something more normal. But yeah, you guys can see the white balance is completely freaked out, as this is way too blue compared to the lighting around. But let's keep it here. We do have some kind of lights here. So we have 4 LED controls. Okay, so that's for the 4 different nozzles. So if I click on the one, the light underneath the nozzle comes on. All right. So back to home page here. I guess let's go ahead and go through everything. So here we have the print button, which is going to read our SD card slot, which nothing's in there right now. We got the prepare. That's going to be all your main functions for the printer, all the movements. So I guess we can go ahead and home and see, make sure everything works. So let's go ahead and click that. Hopefully this camera can change its white balance here, but yeah, everything's moving. So it looks like the Y is good. The X is good also, I guess. And now this whole thing is going down. It's actually going to these sensors here on both sides, as that's where the little tabs that we installed are referenced to. Alright. So it did stop pretty low there, but the nozzle's a pretty good bit away from the bed. So it looks like that works. Let's go ahead and preheat PLA. These are the hot buttons we have. So the extruder is going to heat up to 205, and then we got the beds here all heating up to 60, and you can individually turn them off or on. So I guess let's just do the first one there, which is probably that one right there. And believe it or not, guys, it's actually this one. So that's really odd how they would arrange them like that, but they're not in that order down here, which can get quite confusing. The nozzle's already hot. Our first one's at 40. I guess you can't initiate it from here because you have to manually put it in. Let's see if I just click this. Okay, so they all just start. So you can just start it by clicking this and then turn off which one you don't want. And if you click on it, you can control the temperature of each one. So maybe instead of going to 60, let's just go to 50. I just want to check that they work, and 50 should be more than enough for that. So now we got all 50s here. So right below the preheats, we can see we got load and unload, and that's going to be for our filament. So yeah, pretty straightforward here. As that's warming up, let's go to settings. So here we have quite a few things. We're in basic settings, which has filament detection, on or off, so it was on. Fan on off, language, so this is the languages we got to choose from. The brightness, as we saw, we changed all the way down, which I think it probably should stay there, as the screen is way too bright. And again, I would have loved to see a dark background. We got one self-check. I'm not going to click that right now. Light control, a motor off button. So if you click that, it just shuts down all the motors or stops everything. And we got factory reset. So on the top here, we can see we have advanced settings. So here we have sound. So we can turn that on or off. And that just makes a beep sound when you click on anything. Power loss recovery. You can turn that on or off. The only thing with this is they might not work with spiralized mode. That's probably why it's off. Yeah, I like how they put that as an option. So if you do lose power, it'll resume, which might be quite important depending on what you're printing. Speed adaptive mode. I'm guessing this automatically adjusts the speed for maximum printing. We got vibration pattern optimization, which we probably want to do that. Nozzle PADs, print head selection. Let's see, what is this about? Okay, so you can choose what setup you're using. That's pretty cool. So we're using just a single. Confirm. Alright, so I guess I probably should have just went back. But so it wants me to restart the whole thing. Let's see what this e-stop switch does. Okay, so it's not doing anything. So we're gonna have to go back here and push the main switch. And yeah, there's a lot of fans, guys. There is a lot of noise coming from this thing. Not like super loud noise, but there's quite a bit of fan noise though. And you guys will hear it when I turn it back on. So yeah, lots of fans going on. And we're back to rebooting. Alright, so back here we have the Z-axis tilt adjustment. Okay, it's not doing anything. Platform measurement. What is that about? Alright, so that's for bed leveling, and yeah, it basically sets up for the bed, and then you click on the number and it moves there, and then you adjust the thing. But we got to use the other sheet where we can access the bolts, and we'll go to bed leveling here in a bit. Let's go ahead and go back and see what else we have. So we got network, and this is going to be connecting to the Wi-Fi. So it's going to pull up what's nearby. So I'm going to go ahead and connect, enter the credentials, click on connect, and there it goes. We got the check mark, so we're connected. So now we can go to info, and this is everything about the printer. Little picture here, what it looks like, the build volume, the firmware version we're running, screen version, and then the Elegoo information there. And also here we have the update button. Let's see what happens when we click that. Okay, so yeah, that's for the USB port. So if you have an update, you can plug it in and then click that to update. And for the last thing here, we have level. So it's asking to return to home, confirm. And look at that, there's 100 points to level. Let's see if we can't use this button to stop everything. I don't think so, nothing's really happening. Well, actually, no, it did stop. So yeah, I guess it completely resets the Clipper software. It gives you this little menu here. Alright, so that's good, so that button does work. So we have a few options here. We can shut down, standby, restart. So I guess let's just click restart firmware, I'm guessing. So yeah, it's back to the logo and booting up. And actually it is the next step in the manual, is to run this automatic bed leveling so you can take measurements, and we should be able to set the offset, and then we'll see how much difference it is between all of the points, and see if we need to take further action and actually manually adjust it with the screws and the special build plate that comes with it, where you can access the screws while adjusting it, which goes in detail here of how to do that. So having a bed like this is definitely more complicated than just a normal one piece bed, as there's 4 different plates and they all have to be pretty level. So we'll see here in a bit as this thing sets up for taking the measurements. So it actually is heating up the 4 build plates, which is probably taking a lot of power right now, as we have our 4 power supplies on this end working harder. And actually I can kind of feel it's warm under there. Let's see how our plug feels. Oh yeah, it definitely feels a little warm. I mean, it's just slightly warm. And this is a pretty thick cord, so it should be fine. And this plug is barely warm. Seems like we got pretty good power flow. And this outlet actually is really close to the electrical box, which is literally behind this wall. So I'm not too worried about it, as it's quite close to it. We should be good with this really power hungry printer. And surprisingly, it doesn't take as long as you would think to heat all this up, depending, you know, ambient, but it's not bad, as we have 4 power supplies, 1 for each bed. So it looks like it's going all the way over here. And yeah, pretty hard to film this thing, as it's hiding behind a lot of frame here, and it's quite low where it's at. So yeah, the Z-axis makes some noise. It's got some rumble to it. I wonder if these are lubed. Oh yeah, they're definitely lubed. Shouldn't be an issue. I guess it's just the motors here working through the frame. You can kind of hear them. Yeah, and that's lubed too, I can see. So yeah, everything seems to be okay. And here back on the screen, we can see we're filling in. So we got 100 total. So we're done with 10 and about 90 to go. So yeah. So it's actually pretty quick for how big this thing is. Alright, so we're coming to an end. As we can see, all of our points are filled in. A couple more. Alright, we get a new menu. The printer is homing, and it's set up for us to do the offset. And here it kind of shows you, you know, you can't be too close, can't be too far, you got to be just right. And so we have more coarse movements, then up and down here, and then when you're done, you're going to click confirm. So I'm going to use a normal sheet of paper. We're going to put it underneath the nozzle. And actually, guys, let's break this whole screen down here, which is kind of convenient. It's on a cord. Since we are down here, it'll be easier than going up and down, up and down. But yeah, we do need to go down. Maybe you guys can see quite a bit, actually. So that means we're gonna click on the 1mm and start going down slowly. Well, I guess it won't be slowly, but as you guys can see, we need to go a lot. Okay, so we're getting close. I think I might go one more time. Let's see how that feels. Okay, it's still loose. So now we're gonna turn to 0.1mm and start going down. So we're already 7mm lower, which this number doesn't really matter. What matters is the gap between the nozzle and the bed. So let's start going down on the 0.1. And every time we go down, we're gonna feel the paper. Should be getting close, but it's still not tightened up. So I'm gonna do a double here. Okay, so I guess we needed a little more than I thought. Okay, so now we're too tight. Go back up. Now that we know we're very close, we're gonna go to 0.01mm. So right now we're way too loose. So we're gonna start going down slowly. Still too loose. Okay, I think it's starting to tighten up maybe. Okay, that's odd because we're getting close to where it was tight. Okay, yeah, there we go. 7.990, and that feels almost perfect. Let's see if we go down one. Okay, actually that's perfect. Which is surprising because earlier when we went to 8, it felt too tight. So that just tells me it might not be as precise as we think, but yeah, this feels really good. And if we look at the nozzle, I don't know if you guys can see, but it's literally really close to the build plate. So that should be good right there. And so if we're happy, we're gonna click with confirm, and we ended up being -8mm exactly, which is quite interesting. Let's confirm. And so here, we have a lot of numbers, and these are all the numbers that the nozzle took, all the points from all the 4 different build plates. And what we're looking at here is the difference between them. So if we have a really huge difference, especially for numbers that are close, we probably need to adjust the build plate. But if they're all relatively close, I mean, we only have 0.5 millimeter, looks like at the most. Well, I guess 0.6 if you go from this corner to that, but that's very far away, so that's okay. So yeah, honestly, I don't see anything that's way off. Everything is very close. So the issue would be if you started going into the 1 millimeters or more, that would be definitely way off. I mean, you could fine tune some of these areas here, because this corner here looks a little high compared to the ones beside them. Most corners here are kind of high. This corner is actually kind of low. And then we got the corner of that one up there, which is this one here. Yeah, I can actually even feel it. And that's the 0.54 there, that it's a little high. So I guess let's go ahead and save this data. Save. So it's going to reset the printer and save everything. That way when it prints, it knows how much to bring the nozzle up and down as it goes through the build plate. Now if we're going to adjust the platform measurements, we're going to have to redo the level again. So, but let's go ahead and do platform measurement, because we do need to fix a few points here. And here it says a little note that turning the bolt counterclockwise, so backwards, a whole turn will move the build plate up 0.7 millimeters. So it looks like we need to turn it about half. And so to lower it, you obviously will tighten it, and that'll make it go down. So let's go to the number 1 here. But what we haven't done yet is we haven't changed our plate, which we can still pull it out. And we'll grab one of these leveling plates. Actually, let's move our nozzle completely out of the way. Go to the other side. We can go ahead and install this plate. Now we can see all the bolts through there. Let's go back to 1, and it actually remembers where you've been. And it also shows you the real-time measurement. Oh, that's interesting. So we're going to need an Allen wrench. So we know that going counterclockwise raises it. So let's go about half a turn here, and I'm going to use the stem as a reference. So we raised it. So let's go back to 1 and see what happens. Now again, you guys can see we don't have much area to raise, so we just need to raise the zone. I mean, it's not detailed. There's only 3, 6, 9 bolts total. So it's coming down. And now it's showing that we're actually a lot higher. And that's probably too high, so we need to lower that down. So let's go to number 2. Let's kind of move it out of the way. So I'm going to turn this back about a quarter. So on number 2, we can see the measurement there. Those will go back to 1. Okay, so it dropped. So that should be pretty good, but let's go ahead and check these two. So 5 and 6 to kind of get a better idea of what's going on in this whole area. Yeah, and that looks pretty good, I think. We could go down just a bit on both of those. Actually, let's go up and see what happens. What's over here? Technically, you could just go through all of it and see. Now again, these build plates are different, so the measurement might be just a tiny bit off. Yeah, and that one's actually a lot higher. So I guess we could lower this just a little bit. So I'm just going to go less than a quarter, because I'm unsure. And these will go just a tiny bit on both of them. And let's measure again. So yeah, as you guys can see, it's pretty intuitive. It's not hard. As you keep doing it here, it keeps refreshing the offset. So yeah, that went down just a bit. Let's go back to 6. All right, and that went down too. And that went down too. So we can see we can go down a little more on that one, tiny bit on this one, and a little more on that one. So yeah, you guys get the idea of how to do this. And it's not hard at all. So I'm gonna go around and check everything, pre-adjust every one. And I just have to remove the plate and then put the leveling plate. And it does come with 2 of them, but I think I'm just gonna use 1. That way it's more accurate, as the thickness could be a little different on 2 different ones. So, all right, so I'm just gonna go around this whole thing and just check them all and then adjust them accordingly. And like I said, I'm gonna do all of the sections, and you guys will see that it's quite straightforward and very easy to figure out. All right, so I finished all of them. And the reason these here are not colored in like the other ones is because I did these 2 and then went away, took a break, came back, and the screen was frozen, so I had to restart it. And then did these 2. But what's more important, if you look at all these numbers, you can see how close they are together, meaning they're not very far off each other. And that's the whole point of doing this. And it's actually pretty simple. It just takes a lot of time to adjust each bolt, and you gotta double check, keep checking, round and round. So all of these are done. I still have that leveling plate on that side. I'm gonna raise the Z 100 millimeters so I can pull that plate out. And we'll put the PEI sheet back in. The main thing I noticed, and I don't know if you guys be able to tell, but before all of these didn't line up so well. They weren't flush, but now they're ultra flush. Like you can't even feel the groove. They're so flush. So it's practically perfect here between all the cracks, which is exactly what you want for a perfect smooth surface to print over all of them. So now we can level it again. and it's basically going to go through this whole 100 points again, and we'll see what it comes up with. But this time, compared to last time, it wasn't as perfect and had some pretty big offsets. But yeah, we should be really close this time, but let's see what happens. Alright, so we're to finish up our last ones. As we can see here, they're all filled in. Now we're going to do the same thing with the paper. So we're going to have to go even lower. We're already at -8, if you guys remember. And the reason for that is I lowered all the plates down by tightening them when I adjusted them, so they went down just a tiny bit. Let's find out by how much. I guess let's start with this middle one. Go down, and that's actually too tight. Back to the 0.01 and go up a couple. Yep, still too tight. Okay, so it was a lot closer than I thought. And ironically, we're back at where we were, and it's tight now, so maybe we should just leave it where it's at. That is quite odd. Well, let's see if I can go up a lot more here. Yeah, so it's definitely too loose. Let's go down a couple now. Okay, now it's loose. So yeah, it's not as precise as I thought it would be. So there's like a 0.01 play in the whole system, which kind of makes sense. It's a huge printer, a tiny little play. It's very possible, as the teeth on these belts are farther away and the motors are probably not as accurate for this size printer. So we basically only went down 0.01, and the paper feels really good there. So I think that's pretty good. Well, let's confirm, and now we get to see all of our numbers and how much we are off. And if you guys look, they're really close. They are super close now, way closer than they were before. So yeah, I'm very happy. That's actually excellent. So we got a very large and very flat build plate now. So let's click save data. And so now the printer is going to use this offsets as it prints. So for the next part, let's click on prepare, preheat PLA, and all of our build plates are preheating, but I'm not sure which one it's going to be printing on. So I guess we'll let them all warm up for now. So the bag that has all the nozzles has a thumb drive. It's an 8 gig. Let's go ahead and plug it in. Let's see if we can't access it here under print. And sure enough, we do have files. We also have a little Buddha. Let's see, models. Okay, so we do have more stuff to print, which is kind of cool. But I think we'll just start with the Buddha, as that's what's presented here. So now that we know we have a print, let's go ahead and install filament. I'm going to go here on the spool holder in the back. It is kind of hard to reach, actually. So I'm just using this roll here that's coming to an end. A long way to go. Go all the way from there down to the extruder. I don't think it's adjusted, or maybe it is. Oh, actually, no, it is. There it goes. So I spun the gear and it released, and it's definitely working now. All right, but yeah, the adjustment is over here. There's a little hole, and you use an Allen wrench to adjust the tension on here. If we go back to prepare, we can load the filament here. So let's click that. It's gonna ask how much. I guess that looks good. Confirm. Now that looks like it's misspelled. Well, that's okay. And I do see the gear moving, and the filament is coming out the bottom there. So that's good. Let's turn on this light. Maybe we can see a little better underneath. So everything is heating up. Let's see if we can get this thing started. Click print. Okay, I'm not sure which bed it's going to choose, but I guess we're about to find out. And here we can see it's loading the preview. We got all our parameters, and all our build plates are actually up to heat. Nozzles coming down. Now I'm going to go to settings. And I'm going to get ready to move this up and down here, and you can choose the increments. I guess I'll choose the higher one just in case I need to go up more. And I'm going to keep track of what it's doing there to make sure that we're not going to scrape on the bed. Looks like we do have a little booger underneath that. It's going all the way over there now. Okay, it's purging. And as we can see, it's pretty much perfect. And actually it might be, well, kind of hard to tell. Might be a little close, but let's just bring it up a little bit. Yeah, that feels a lot better. But yeah, it's pretty much perfect, I would say. So we're very close. So the printer is printing. It's kind of hard to show you guys, as there's a lot of frame here in between, and a small little sliver through here where you can see. And you have to get down on the floor just to even get to it. And you guys can probably hear it is quite loud, the motors, as it's moving back and forth. So it doesn't seem like it has silent steppers, as it's quite loud. Which is interesting that they didn't implement that. Yeah, pretty exciting. We got our first print going. Our offset seems just right. So in the settings, we can see we can adjust things, the baby steps, the print speed, the extrusion flow rate. Then we got one hot end under 4, and then the bed there. So I'm thinking, I wonder if these beds here, let's see, we can put them to 0. And just have the number 0 one there, the number 0 nozzle on. And I'm gonna keep track and make sure that that's the correct one here as they cool off. But yeah, the thing really sped up, and looks like this is a pretty big print, not a small Buddha like I thought on the other printer, so this is a large one. But yeah, everything's working and looks really good so far. And back here at the screen we have multi-nozzle adjustment, speed adaptiveness, and then the back button. And while we're printing, this is what we see. We do have a progress bar here that's quite long, how much time we got left. You can turn our light on and off from here, and then that's the settings, and pause and stop there. So yeah, pretty cool. And here we have the clipper emergency shut off, just the same way as we'd push that button there. And of course our file name on the top. Alright, so I had to step away, and as I was gone, the print finished, and it took only 2 hours and 11 minutes, which is quite impressive because it was a pretty large print. And you can print again here or go back, and it does tell you here in meters how much filament we used. And so for this printer, it's probably not a very large print, but in general it is pretty large. As you guys can see my hand, it's not a small print, and it looks really good. There's a little bit of whispers here and there, but other than that, it looks really solid. The bed cooled off. Let's see if it just pops off. I think we'll have to flex it off. We do have this little purge here. Let's see. There we go. It's a lot of surface area, but it popped right off. So the PI sheets are working great, sticking very well and popping right off. And you guys can see we're perfect off the build plate. The bottom looks great, and the quality on this thing looks, I guess I would say, excellent for how fast it printed, considering, you know, the size of this thing. It only took 2 hours and 11 minutes, and we did hit 300 millimeters a second, as the printer did show on the screen there. So just for fun, I think I want to print this nutshell opener, or nutcracker, or whatever you want to call it. So it's going to take an hour only. It's not very big and not that much filament, so maybe we'll just use the same filament and finish it out. So we'll click on print, and we're heating all up, and looks like this time it's only heating up this bed here. So I guess it does remember that we didn't use these last time, so it keeps them off, which is nice. And we got a really large picture here of what we're about to print. Alright, so here we are at the computer. I got the thumb drive plugged in. Let's go ahead and open it up. So we can see we have some folders, and they included G-code Buddha print here. So the user manual has a PDF of the OrangeStorm, except for my computer can't read it for whatever reason. Then we got the software and 3D models. So they have a G-code, an STL, and also a picture of what it is for each one. Let's go ahead and go into software. So here we have the user manual in PDF, and this is going to go through the slicer and how to install it and then use it. And then most importantly, we have the Cura software for Mac and Windows. So we're using a Mac, so we're going to click on this one. So then we're going to grab the Elegoo folder and drag it into applications. It's going to install. And I'm not too sure what's going on, but this card is very, very slow. So we're gonna have to wait here a bit. All right, it's done. So now we're gonna go to our applications and open it up. And there we go. So it looks like it remembers that we've used the Neptune 4 Max. Let's add printer. Click on non-network printer, Elegoo. And here on the very bottom, we can see the OrangeStorm Giga. Click add. and we can see the humongous build plate. That's insane. And it appears that we have a 0.6 nozzle installed. So if you ever use Cura, this is very understandable to you, but if you've never used it, it might be a little confusing at first, but it's not too hard. So the first thing we need to do, drag some kind of model in here. I say we do this headphone stand holder, and it does fit on one of the plates, but I want to print it right in the middle to see how it goes and how our plates are connected and what kind of gaps we'll have. So I think this is a pretty good print to print. It's not huge and shouldn't take too long, I don't think, but in any case, select it by clicking on it. And then you got options here. You can move it, scale it, so we can make this much larger if we wanted to. We're going to stick to the 100% for now. Rotate it in different ways. I think I'm just going to keep it this way. You have more options here to manipulate the model. Now the more important stuff is here where it says standard. So here we have our layer height. So these are all our parameters, and if you click on these little dots here, you can see we can go through basic, advanced, and expert. I like to go to advanced as we get more options. Here we can see extruder number popped up. So the print flow is a little bit lower on the 0.6 nozzle, and it seems to be just right, but obviously you can go up and down. If you're having, bloating or feels like it's under, then you can go up. So we got our layer height, initial layer height. I think all this looks good. Normally I like to change the wall count, but because we are on 0.6 nozzle, we should be good right here. And we're gonna make the top layers a little more than the bottom, to 6. You can choose to turn off fill gaps if you don't want it. Sometimes I do, but I'm going to keep it on for this print. Infill density is at 15, which I think is good for this nozzle. Our printing temperature and the build plate at 60 should be good. Here we have the speeds, 200, 120 on the wall, and then 300 for the travel. So these all look pretty good, and the initials look good too. So I think I'm just going to leave it. Acceleration control is enabled, which will increase the speed as needed. So we'll leave it the way it is. Retractions are enabled with 0.8. I think I'm going to change this to 1, as models that came with the printer had a little bit of stringing, but maybe I'll do 1.2. Feel like that's probably going to be just right. So we're going to leave the speed alone. Combing keeps the nozzle within the print area as much as possible. So here we have Z-hop. When retracting, I definitely want to turn this off because that's going to really work the extruder hard depending on some of the models. Now you can try it with on and off. You normally prefer this off, so I'm going to turn it off for this print. Cooling looks good. We don't need supports for this print, I don't think. Actually, looking at it, maybe we do need supports right here, but let's just print without and see what happens. But yeah, if you want to generate a support, you just click on that, and mostly I leave all this alone. The only thing I adjust is the overhead angle. So the higher you go, the stronger the angle, up to 90 degrees. So if you don't want supports everywhere, which this thing will put them all over the bottom here because this is concave. For this print, I'm just going to leave this off. Build plate adhesion is on brim, which I think I don't want anything. But if I would use anything, it would be a skirt with one line. Should be more than enough. We also have special modes here. So we have spiralized mode, which just prints one layer around. And we're going to probably use that here in a bit, quite a bit, for printing vases and large items, as that'll be the setting we'll use. But for this print, leave that off. And yeah, we'll just leave everything the way it is. Let's click on the slice button down here. It's going to slice our model. And it says here it's only going to take 2 hours and 22 minutes, which is very impressive. This is not a huge print, but you guys can see it's decent size. And that 0.6 nozzle really makes a big difference. And so from here, what we can do is just save the file. And if you click on this little arrow, you can save it straight to the removable, the included thumb drive that we plugged in. Click on save, and it's done. And we can eject it straight from here and then take our thumb drive to the printer and print out our print. And that's exactly what we'll do. Now, this printer does have a lot more connectivity wirelessly, and the way that works is through the browser and Fluid, which is the Clipper software. So let's go ahead and generate this file to our computer, or the G-code. So instead of saving it to the card, we'll save it to our hard drive. Click on save. So now we have the G-code. And so if you open up your browser and type in your IP address, you get to this screen if your printer is connected to Wi-Fi, which is the Fluid Clipper software. And this is going to give you a lot of detail about your printer, which is really nice. Not only can you send files to it from here, you can preheat, you can monitor everything, you can actually move things from here, you can control the speed, the pressure advance, the flow, smooth time, all that stuff. And you guys can see we got lots of things going on here. So this is kind of like the home page where these sections are, and you can add pieces to the main home. And so what you do is just grab the G-code we made and just drop it into the jobs, and it's going to upload. And for here, you can just right click or click and select print, and the printer will just start printing it. You can also do other things here with the file. But before we click on print, let's go through this real quick. So we have console. So these are kind of separated from the blocks here. which we have the console here. So this is what the printer is doing. So these are just dedicated jobs. We can see our print here, our first one. History. And we can actually see the prints that we already printed on this printer. So we've done 4 jobs, the total time it's been on and running, and how much filament was used. So yeah, lots of details here. You can tune here. We could actually see the mesh of our bed, a huge, large bed. And yeah, as we can see, it's not perfect. We're a little high here compared to here, but it's a very small amount. But I guess could be better. For this kind of large bed, this is actually not bad by any means, but it could be refined to better. And down here we can actually turn on and off our filament detector. The next part is configuration, and you can configure the code on the printer straight from here, which is pretty incredible. Control practically everything, and this is what makes the Clipper software so awesome. We have our system here. We can actually see what everything's doing, the load, the memory, the CPU, and all that stuff. So yeah, it gets pretty detailed. And then we got settings, control all your things here. So but yeah, let's go ahead and go to our dashboard here, and we'll print this headphone stand. So it's now sending the file wirelessly, and it should start preheating our bed, and we can see our target's all the way up here at 60, and it's starting to rise, and they're all going to preheat, looks like, and the extruder will start preheating once the bed gets closer to 60. And our status here is at 0%, file name, all that stuff. So, and if you wanted to connect a camera USB, you can actually have a window here that shows you a live preview through that camera also. And you also do have this emergency stop here in case anything goes wrong. You can wirelessly stop it. So yeah, if you're using Elegoo or the latest printers, you should definitely be using Fluid here from the web browser. And here on the screen we can see that it's loaded up. Everything's preheating. That's actually almost done here. The nozzle should start preheating shortly, and there it goes. So here on the printer I can feel the toastiness, and we're gonna print right in the middle. I didn't even check if they were lined up. Yeah, that's pretty good. Probably could have made this gap a little smaller, but it should be fine. You can move these around where it's more perfect, meaning the gaps, kind of get them all clumped up. And yeah, the printer's starting, so it's gonna home and start printing right in the middle. All right, there it goes. So it's perched and it's going for it. So yeah, it's printing right in the middle of all the beds, and yeah, it's a little close in some spots, and actually pretty good. I'm just feeling it off the finger here. Not bad at all. And I probably won't be back till it'll be finished. Hopefully everything will go good, and it should be done in about 2 hours and 20 minutes. Alright, so it took 2 hours and 33 minutes to complete this thing, and not much stringing between the legs, which is nice. So the bed's completely cooled off. See how easy this thing will pop off. Super easy. Now let's see if we can look here in the back. So yeah, I can see a little bit of dimples here. Nothing serious for sure, and you guys can probably see that we definitely needed some supports for the overhangs. But I think it might clean up okay. But it looks really good up front. And the 0.6 nozzle actually does a really good job, and it's pretty quick for, you know, how large it is. I'm pretty excited to print something much larger than that. Or maybe we'll start with something not too large, but start scaling it up. Alright, so we printed out quite a few prints and they're all inside the printer, and we can see there's quite a few of them. It is a little hard to tell how big they are on camera, as I do have a really wide lens right now, but believe me, they are huge prints, and we can see that by looking at these smaller ones here, which are still pretty large considering this is what a normal benchy looks like. So yeah, pretty large prints here, and I do have to say, guys, I'm greatly impressed with the Giga, as it does deliver on its promise, printing big prints. So all these prints were printed in the 0.6 nozzle, which is what is installed on the head, but you also get 4 more nozzles ranging from 0.4 to 0.1, so you get another 0.6 and a 0.8. So I decided to stick with 0.6 as I was making reasonable timing, and I did want to have a reasonable quality also. Could have went to 0.8 and make it, you know, print faster, but that's going to be all up to you and what you're printing. So starting here with the small ones, this is the print that came with the printer, and you guys can see it turned out really good. Very uniform. So this was already sliced, that was included. The thing that surprised me the most is how uniform all the layers were, and that continued to happen with this nutcracker. So it's functional and works very well. The 0.6 nozzle does a great job on the walls, as you guys can see, very clean, and you can kind of see the steps there in the layers. So yeah, overall a great print here also, and those bolt spins perfectly in there. It's tight, so good tolerances. Also, we had this included, which is, I guess, like a little planter. It's kind of hard to see on white, but also looks really good overall. Again, the walls are surprisingly nice. And we're going to see that throughout the prints. So the first print I printed on my own, which we sliced, was this headphone holder. And it turned out pretty well. It prints like this. And you guys can see the walls are really nice. I didn't use support, so we had a little droopiness from the back, but other than that, it was successful. And also we did print in the middle of the bed to see what kind of grooves we got, which are very small. You can't almost tell where they are. And this print took 2 hours and 35 minutes to print. So then we stepped it up to this frog, and this is much larger. You guys can see my hand. And this thing turned out great. Very smooth, uniform layers. Also was printed in the middle of the bed, so we can see our intersections there with the beds. Very minor, but we can still see, like, this one's a little higher, this one's a little lower. So I can still adjust these beds to be more closer, but yeah, it's not bad and actually pretty tolerable considering the size of this print. Again, you guys can see how smooth everything is. It does look like I should have used a little more upper layers, as we have some gappage here. You can kind of see on the eye there. But yeah, other than that, it turned out really good. And yeah, we're starting to print bigger, which this frog here, since it's a more solid print, took 12 hours and 35 minutes, which is not too bad for how large it is. So the next print we got here is this bear, and this thing looks really cool. So we got a lot of holes, so lots of retractions, and just a lot of moving around. And you guys can see this thing turned out really good. There is a little bit of droopage here and there, but overall I'm really impressed, as this print did take a long time to print, of 46 hours and 20 minutes. Again, that had to do a lot with retracting and moving around. As you guys can see, there's a lot of holes. So the bottom is not perfect, it's a little rough because of the way this print is. It's smooth where it's laying on the bed, but then here we have overhangs. And I didn't use supports, and so it kind of drooped down. So this could be probably better. And we did have a little bit of some kind of stringing here, but it's not terrible, and you can reach it all and clean it up. So yeah, and all the layers are really nice. I did use about 2 kilograms of filament to print this, and I actually had a change of 2 types of filaments. You maybe can see it's like a little more clear here and then more white up here, so around this area. But yeah, if you step back, you can't really tell. But yeah, this was a pretty cool print. Also very fun to print. And if you guys notice, we're doing really good with printing really long prints and not having any failures, which I did not experience at all with this printer, which is quite incredible. So the next print is definitely our most ambitious project, is this face or bust of this statue. This thing is quite large. You can see my hand here. So it's almost true to life, but a bit smaller, but it's getting there. And this print is quite incredible, as it not only printed very well, we really didn't have much issues, except for one, which I'll talk about here in a second. And it's not the printer's fault, but this print took 57 hours and 57 minutes to print, which is a very long time, over 2 days. And we used over 3 spools of filament for this print. And by the way, the filament detector did a great job of detecting the end of the spool and pausing the print to change to the new spool and then continue printing. So yeah, if we look at this print closer, we can see there's a lot of detail. Let's go ahead and look at the bottom, and we can see it's quite clean. You can see our 4 beds intersecting there. Overall, very nice. And we stuck to the build plates, no issues. And here we can see on our first spool, we were doing very, very well. Very smooth back. Until we got to the second spool, and that's where it started, about right here. And you can see we started having weird artifacting, which is really interesting because it seems like it was all filament related, as it wasn't even or something. And we kind of see these same waves going up here for the second roll. Right about to here where the neck starts. This filament ended and we started a new one, and all of a sudden things got good again. So yeah, we just had a bad roll of filament, looks like. Is the only explanation that I can think of. So we're gonna have a little bit of inconsistency here. Everything below and above is pretty much perfect. That's what it should be, obviously. But yeah, there's a lot of detail, guys. Even though, you know, this is not printed well, you guys can see this is a pretty detailed print. It looks really good. Lots of great details, even in this not so good areas. But let's go ahead and go up here and you guys can see where it really gets good, and you know, the consistency is beautiful and the layers just go down so good, as you guys can see. Very impressed with the whole print, and we could have printed this even much more larger, but you know, be prepared to have a lot of filament for this kind of printing. And also in hindsight, I probably should have hollowed this model out, that way it was more like a shell printing instead of solid with infill inside. You know, uses quite a bit of filament. The next two prints are in spiralized mode, which is probably the funnest way to print on this printer because they're large and they're quick, and the reason for that is there's just a few layers on the bottom and it's just one layer all the way around, so they're hollow or like a very thin shell, and so they don't take long to print. So if we look at this rocket plane, we can see the layers on it are beautifully put down. I mean, I would say almost excellent. We do get a little bit of wobble on the top. I can kind of feel it, but overall very nice for how large this is. And this is the full 1000 millimeters up, so yeah, pretty tall print. And definitely this is really fun to print, just kind of as like props or just decorations or whatever. And so the plane only took half a spool of filament and about 9 hours and 30 minutes to print, which is not bad for, you know, the size. And speaking of decorations, here we have a pretty large, I guess, Christmas tree in spiralized mode, and this thing turned out great. Also, it comes to a point. The cooling did pretty well here for this point. But yeah, also very nice. You can kind of see the lines a little bit, and it's because I think it was scaled up so much, and because they're contour lines, there's like a pattern that shows up, but it actually looks pretty good. And this is a more of a silky filament, and it looks really, really good, guys. And it has a pretty large base. I can't remember the size, but you can see it goes almost end to end. So yeah, very large print also. And maybe I can show you the bottom here of this behemoth, and you can see exactly where the plates interchange right here. And yeah, honestly, this one is really good. You can almost not feel the line except for a little bit right here, which yeah, it's pretty impressive for how large you can print on this kind of printer. So who's this printer for? Well, I would say it's probably for hobbyists more than anything. Even though it is a large industrial feeling printer, it's still pretty basic in its design and its capabilities. But it's definitely quite unique and makes it very interesting for anyone that wants to print larger items or has a good use for it to print something like this. Or maybe you want to print 4 things at a time by getting 3 more nozzles. But I feel like for that, you might be better off with 4 smaller printers than this really huge printer that you have to figure out where to put, as it does take a lot of space. Now obviously its main strength is its build volume, which is 800 by 800 and 1000 millimeters tall. Now we do have quite a bit of, you know, dead space around the build plate, which has to be like that because of the design of this thing moving up and down. We do get a direct drive extruder with good cooling and a nozzle that heats up all the way to 300C. Our bed goes to 100C with no issues, and the reason for that is we have 4 power supplies that run each one. We also have a bed leveling, which is really easy through the screen. So there is some nuances involved in manually leveling this thing, as that's a little tedious, but once you get it pretty flat, the out of bed leveling takes over and it's quite flawless. As you guys saw, the bottoms look great. We also have linear rails for the Y, 1 on each side, and also the X. And that really shows up on the prints. They're very precise. And for the Z, we have these really thick rods, 4 of them total, 2 on each side. We also have adjustments for the Y and X belts. And all our cables are very nicely managed with the chains, even here going down the side. We do have safety built in with a circuit breaker. So we have all our normal features with Wi-Fi, filament detection, power loss resume, spiralized printing, and not to mention this printer can print 300 millimeters a second. I actually stayed under that, around 200, which seems to be the sweet spot. And probably the biggest thing is the weight of this thing being 104 kilograms by itself. That's about 230 pounds. And that really shows because the frame is super solid, and probably one of the most compelling things about this printer is how well it's built. We do have 4 adjustable feet, 1 on each corner, that you can level this thing out. Easy access to a USB port and an emergency switch to shut it off. And we have this connection here going to our screen, which is great. It is quite large. I actually connected it to this frame here. Normally goes up here, but yeah, it's quite easy to use. Elegoo makes it easy as it's clipper based. And probably the best thing about this thing is that when connected to the Fluid browser, you can control everything from the back end and monitor it and whatnot else. So yeah, it's a good screen. It works great. You can move it down if you need to, just clips right out. And obviously all your controls here for the printer. So is this printer for everyone? I would probably say no, as you do need to have the room, and you also need the reason. Do you want to print very large prints, or do you need to? But if you do need to, I don't think there's anything else on the market that's this unique and offers this much with this kind of construction for its price. But if you are that person, then I think you'd be very happy with this thing, as it does have a lot of potential just being a DIY machine. There are some quirks with this thing. One being the filament doesn't feed very well when it's higher up, but of course you could use that little roll and feed from the bottom up. And also I found this sensor here that senses the bed not always being very accurate. But other than that, not really much to pick at the Giga, except for maybe it being a little too loud. So right now it's just idling and it's not too bad, but when it starts printing, the fans kick in, all the power supplies kick in, and it gets quite loud. Alright, well hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, then hit that like button. If you want to pick up the Giga for yourself, check out the links in the description. And if you enjoy videos like this, check out my 3D printing playlist. I'm sure you'll find something interesting there. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.